So, Israeli Defense Forces Chief Herzai Halevi has issued an apology after Israeli forces killed 7 aid workers, including 3 British veterans, on Monday. The aid workers were providing security for the World Central Kitchen charity in Gaza. Israel have said that the strikes were unintended. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak came out and said that the deaths appalled him, describing the situation in Gaza as intolerable. And the families of the 3 British aid workers who lost their lives have now issued heartbreaking statements about their devastation at events today. Is this the tipping point in the bombardment of Gaza now? Should the sales of arms to Israel be stopped? James, let me come to you first. It feels like today there is a change in the air in terms of Israeli allies, but probably just as importantly, the mood of the wider population.
So I think if you looked at the mood of the wider population, it's months and months and months that the public, if you look at polls, have been horrified by the ongoing war crimes that are being committed by the State of Israel against the Palestinian people. These aid workers who were killed are added to already around 200 aid workers who have been killed in Israeli bombings so far in the conflict. There's over 100 journalists who have also been killed. There have been assaults on pretty much all of the medical infrastructure. Of course, we know tens of thousands of people have died. So that's where the public has already been. The politicians and the media class in this country have been way behind them. But now, at last, perhaps they're catching up, because it's, for large parts of the political class, it's one thing for British bombs and British bullets and British diplomatic cover to be complicit in one of the great crimes of our age, but when they are involved in killing our own citizens, it's absolutely clear that arms sales to Israel must be stopped, because we can't be selling arms that are being used in gross abuses of human rights. And that is what we have been seeing for 6 months, and it's been clear that that is what has been happening for 6 months.
David, those images from October the 7th were almost like nothing we've ever seen before. But we are 6 months later now. Does it to you feel that the response is disproportionate?
War is almost never proportionate. War almost always falls hardest on the most vulnerable. And quite frankly, the incredulity of people who have just realised this surprises me. War is terrible. War needs to be avoided. It is for that reason that, to a large extent, organisations like Hamas should not be geared up and presented as legitimate peace partners, when in actual fact they were preparing for this attack. They were preparing for this brutality. Now, I have to say that as human beings, we are rational, we are empathic. When we see the horrific suffering that is going on, it is natural for us to be disgusted by what we see. And it can even feel cathartic to use the most extreme language, the most hyperbolic language to describe what is going on. It's unhelpful. James, the war is not against the Palestinian people. It's against Hamas.
Tell that to the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been killed.
It is a horrific,
who have been predictably flattened,
brutal war.
Who have had their infrastructure targeted by AI-generated targeting, power targets which are to target infrastructure that civilians use.
James,
the shutting off of food, fuel, medicine and water on the 8th of October was guaranteed to create the famine-like conditions which we are seeing now. That is not famine-like conditions for Hamas. That is famine-like conditions for 2.3 million people.
Go on, David.
Well, surely it highlights the fact that Hamas are using civilian infrastructure. You know it, and I know it. The Palestinian people are suffering horrifically, and if I could flick a switch and this war would end with peace, I would do it in a second. But the Israelis are trying to recover their hostages who are being raped, who are being brutalised in a manner that you and I probably, thank God, will never have to imagine even, right?
When hostages were released, was that when there was a temporary ceasefire, or was it when they were continuing the bombings, the devastation, the destruction, the occupation of the largest hospital, the destruction of medical facilities, the bombing of journalists, the destruction of aid convoys? When was that? Was it during the destruction bit, or was it during the temporary ceasefire bit?
I don't want to see armed conflict. I think you're naive if you think that the fact Israel went in didn't make an impact, didn't cause those hostage negotiations to take place, didn't strengthen anyone's hand in that, or at least give them some bargaining power.
Then why are the families of the hostages themselves angry at the invasion? Why, in the first place, was there a protest at Netanyahu's office calling for there to not be the invasion in the first place? Why are there family members at protests saying that what they want to see is negotiation to bring their loved ones home? Because, of course, that is what should happen. The taking of civilians is a crime.
To be a hostage or to be the family of a hostage is a situation none of us should ever be in. Of course, they're going to think of any scenario where their loved one might come back unharmed. So, of course, they're going to say those things. But I would ask you, what would you like Israel to do? To pull out, allow Hamas to rearm and to come back and do another October 7th again and again, as they've said?
I would, of course, like to see Israel pull out entirely. And I would
leave Hamas? Leave Hamas to rearm?
Just hold on a second. I mean, let's see who's been doing the larger, when you say you can't negotiate with one side, I mean, you have to negotiate with the people who are there. The Palestinian people have to, have to negotiate with a state which has carried out horrific and, terrorist and illegal acts against them, not just since October the 7th, but for decades. So, yes, the state of Israel should cease the bombardment, because it isn't doing anything. This is not creating long-term stability for Israel either.
You want Israel to pull out and leave Hamas to rearm.
Want Israel...
One second. You want the UK to stop funding Israel. Do you believe Israel should exist at all?
I think that... I don't think that an apartheid state, I don't think a state which...
Again, another slur.
It's not a slur. It's an objective... No, it's an objective legal term in international law.
Hold on, wait. Yes or no? Yes or no? Should Israel exist?
Let me...
Should Israel exist?
Let me finish. The question is, in what form? Does a state have a right to occupy others? If you're saying that's Israel, then that involves occupying others and operating an apartheid system. No one has a right to that. Now, are you... No, wait. Now, are you saying... Because this is how it's usually presented. It's usually presented, if you're saying that Israel doesn't have a right to do whatever it wants, you think that Jews don't have a right to live there. I think that Jewish people have an absolute right to live there, in the same way that I think that Palestinians have an absolute right to return there.
Both people have very strong links to the land, and there in my opinion, should be a free, fair, two-state solution, contiguous. Would that be acceptable to you?
Sure, but it's not up to me. Of course, but my point is...
I'm glad we got there.
But is that even possible now, Yosef? Like, is that, given the bloodshed of the last 6 months, the next generation of division which has been created?
It has to be possible. It's the only option that we have. And there's been equally brutal conflicts, for example, between the Greeks and the Turks. They've managed to make peace. Peace is possible. We can live together. In actual fact, the Israelis and Palestinians are far more similar than they are.
Do you have... do either of you... I want a time scale off you. Best and worst case scenario. Best case scenario that this conflict is brought to an end and a two-state solution is found.
I'm for doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's very possible that there'd be a two-state solution without peace at first. But the right thing to do is the right thing to do.
Within what, a year? Within 2 years?
It could happen.
10 years?
It could happen very quickly if there were legitimate peace partners. If the Palestinian leadership were genuinely ready for peace, and the Israeli leadership had maybe a slightly different leader who might engage.
Do you view any of the current cabinet as being, in your view, legitimate partners for peace in the strict terms that you've put forward?
There are absolutely, because I'm sure you know,
do you think
Israel has coalition governments. There's many different factions there. So absolutely, there would be people in that government who would be part of a government for peace. I genuinely believe that.
What about you, James, in terms of a time scale here? What's the best case scenario to stop this death toll of 33,000 Palestinians dead at the moment, 75,000 wounded?
Yeah. So in order to stop the destruction, we need to, as much as possible, throw sand in the wheels of the war machine, which is why stop selling bombs and stop providing diplomatic... please wait. Stop providing diplomatic cover for these extremely grave crimes. That's the first step. And there are lots of things that people can do at home, and there are lots of things that people are already doing. It's not just about protesting. It's not just about political pressure. There's actions that people are taking within, if they work in companies that are complicit in what is going on, and there's a wide range of them, engaging in blockades and direct action against arms shipments and against fuel that is used to fuel this war. So those are the immediate things. Then in the larger sense, Israel, I believe, has had two objectives which run contradictory. One is to have as much of the land as possible, and the other is normalisation. And for a while, these two things were running together. And that was the supposed success of the Netanyahu policy. And that has now been completely finished. Israel will not be a normal state while it is occupying another people, and while there are no rights, there is no liberation for the Palestinian people, who for decades have been dispossessed by the State of Israel and by its backers.
Yosef, respond to that.
You mentioned stopping the wheels of war. What you're suggesting is that Israel, which is a country surrounded by foes who want to destroy it, won't have the ammunition or the support to defend itself. So again, I'd ask you, do you want Israel to exist?
Which state is in the region, is nuclear armed, has the capacity to carry out extremely technically impressive precision strikes in a city in the north of Syria? And this is my point about targeting. If you have it's not like Israel doesn't have the capacity to be extremely targeted. If you look at that assassination, it is extraordinarily...
do you think they did it on purpose?
What?
Why would
the death of the aid workers, do you think
why
that
would
was
they
a
kill those
deliberate
aid workers?
I don't know why they killed those particular aid workers. I do know they've killed 200 of them. I don't know what... I don't know if, of course, some of the journalists were targeted, of those over 100 who have been killed. I don't know about every single case. I think really what you're seeing here is the value of life ascribed to Palestinians by the Israeli state is so low that their actions will obviously lead to famine, will obviously lead to mass slaughter, will obviously lead to the physical and mental scarring of an entire generation of children. Half the population, basically, are children. That is not a path to peace at all.
The IDF chief was really clear, and he said the strike was not carried out with the intention of harming WCK aid workers. It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during complex...
Misidentification. If you don't care,
James,
then you do it.
James,
that's what's happened again and again and again and again. And then...
Go on,
you are purposefully taking the least empathic route to Israel on any factor.
The least
empathic route. Israel is in an incredibly difficult position, right?
Yes, because it's carrying out a genocide against another group of people.
You don't want me to interrupt. Allow me to speak
yes,
as well. You've not taken into account the density of the population, the size of the land, the fact that Hamas are using guerrilla terrorist tactics. You're ignoring all of that. Right? The fact that Israel are trying to get their hostages back. They are, and they're known for, trying to limit civilian casualties.
I do not believe that they are remotely limiting civilian casualties.
They're trying...
No, I do not believe that.
You don't believe they're trying?
No, I do not believe so. So let's take, even if we accept, which is not true, but even if we accept that there's a terrorist command centre in the Al-Shifa hospital, which there wasn't, but let's assume there was. If I were a military commander... and the option is some terrorists have gone in there and you can destroy it and you can kill dozens or hundreds of health workers, of patients. You know what? I wouldn't order the destruction of that hospital.
You know what, fellas?
I have a higher value for human life.
Let's carry this on after the break.